That's the Maureen O'Hara who walked off a production in 1953 and didn't look back and didn't apologize and didn't pretend the cost wasn't real. The one who waited for the work that was worth what she brought to it. And then brought everything. Republic Pictures, Hollywood, 1953. Maureen O'Hara is 33 years old. She has made 31 films. She has worked with John Ford. She has worked with John Wayne. She has a face that Technicolor was practically invented to capture and a presence that cinematographers build entire setups around before she arrives on set. By any reasonable measure of the industry in 1953, she is at the height of something. And she has just walked off a production. If stories like this one stay with you, subscribe now. Every week, a story you won't find anywhere else. The production is a film called War Arrow, Universal Pictures. A Western. Cavalry, frontier, the kind of material Hollywood is manufacturing by the dozen in 1953. Because Westerns are selling, and the formula is established, and the formula does not require anyone to do anything that feels genuinely difficult or genuinely true. Maureen O'Hara has been attached to War Arrow for 6 weeks. She has read the script. She has attended costume fittings. She has done the early work that precedes a production, the invisible labor of arriving prepared, of understanding who the character is and what the film needs, and where those two things align and where they don't. Where they don't align is the problem. The character she has been asked to play is a version of something she has seen in a dozen scripts over the preceding 5 years. A woman who exists at the edges of the male story, who reacts, who is frightened at the right moments and grateful at the right moments and decorative at all the other moments. A woman whose internal life is suggested rather than shown, whose presence in the frame is functional rather than essential, whose name appears above the title, but whose function in the story is somewhere considerably below it. She has played versions of this character before. The industry expected her to keep playing it. The industry expected her to understand that this was the nature of the work available to women in 1953 Hollywood, and to accommodate herself to that nature, the way every other actress of her generation had accommodated themselves to it. She had accommodated it for years. She had taken the scripts she was given and found within them whatever was true, and built toward that truth in every take, on every set, with the absolute consistency of craft that Ford and Wayne and every director she had worked with closely had recognized as something the industry only produced once or twice in a generation. But accommodation has a limit. The limit is the place where the accommodation stops serving the work and starts replacing it. In the script for War Arrow, the limit has been reached. She goes to the producer. She explains her concerns with precision and without drama. She is not asking for rewrites that redesign the film around her. She is asking for the character to have an interior life that the camera can actually find. She is asking for 3 scenes that currently exist only to move the plot to be given something true inside them. She is asking in the language of someone who has spent 15 years understanding exactly what the camera sees and what it doesn't, for the material to be worth what she is prepared to bring to it. The producer listens. He is polite. He explains that the script has been approved, that the schedule is set, that the budget does not accommodate the kind of development she is describing, that other actresses have read this script and found it perfectly workable. Maureen O'Hara listens to all of this. Then she says, "I understand." And she leaves the meeting. She does not leave angry. She does not leave with speeches or ultimatums, or the kind of dramatic exit that becomes a story people tell at industry parties. She simply concludes, in the quiet and complete way that she concludes things, that the conversation is over, and that the only remaining question is what she is going to do about it. What she does about it is walk off the production. She does it properly, with notice, with the contractual formalities observed, with no attempt to damage the film or the people making it. She simply removes herself from the equation, clearly and without noise, the way she removes herself from any situation that is asking her to be less than what she actually is. The industry reacts the way the industry reacts when someone does something it doesn't expect and didn't approve in advance. It decides she is difficult. It decides she is unreliable. It decides, with the swift and absolute certainty of a system that protects itself from challenge by reframing challenge as pathology, that Maureen O'Hara has a problem. That the problem is her. That the problem will follow her. The studio head calls her into his office. The meeting is not a conversation, it is a verdict. He explains what walking off a production means for a career in this industry. He explains the phone calls he has already made and the phone calls he will make if she does not reconsider. He explains, in the precise language of a man who has delivered this speech before and watched it work, that she is finished in this town if she persists in this position. She listens to all of it. Then she picks up her bag and walks to the door and opens it and leaves. The studio head watches her go. He has delivered this speech to a dozen actors and actresses over the course of his career. He has watched all of them reconsider. He watches her walk through the door and down the corridor, and he understands, in the particular way that people understand things they did not want to understand, that this one is not going to reconsider. He makes the phone calls. What follows is the period that people describe, in the histories of this era that are written much later, as Maureen O'Hara's wilderness years. The period when the studio system turned its back on her, and the roles stopped coming, and the industry consensus was that she had made an irreversible error and would have to live with the consequences. The consensus is wrong. This is not immediately obvious. In the short term, the consequences are real. Fewer offers, smaller productions, the particular cold shoulder that Hollywood gives to people who have demonstrated that they cannot be managed. She feels it. She is not unaware of what the walkout has cost her in the immediate term. But she does not feel it the way the industry intends her to feel it. She does not feel it as evidence that she was wrong. She feels it as evidence that the industry has a very limited idea of what she is for, and that the industry's idea of what she is for has never been the most important opinion in the room. She goes home to Ireland for a period. She is not hiding. She is not licking wounds. She is doing the thing she has always done when the noise of the industry becomes louder than the work. She removes herself from the noise and sits with what is actually true. What is actually true is that she is 33 years old, that she has 31 films behind her, that she knows exactly what she can do and exactly what she is worth, and that neither of those things has changed because a studio head made phone calls. That the camera has always known who she is, regardless of what the industry thinks about her in any given season. She waits. She does not wait passively. She reads scripts. She takes meetings. She is selective in a way that the industry reads as stubbornness, and that is actually something simpler and more durable. She is waiting for material that deserves what she brings to it. She is waiting for a director who understands what he is working with. She is waiting for the thing that justifies the cost of what she has done, which is not the walkout itself, but the years of accommodation that preceded it. The years of finding the true thing inside material that didn't quite deserve it, and delivering it anyway, and watching the industry respond primarily to her face and her hair, and the technicolor improbability of her appearance, rather than to the specific and irreplaceable quality of what she actually does. She is waiting for someone to need the real thing. John Ford calls. He has a picture. A story with genuine interior lives in it. Characters who want things that the plot cannot easily give them, and who carry that want through every scene in a way the camera will find. He has been looking at it for a year. He has been thinking about who can carry the female lead with the specific quality the material requires. Not decoration, not reaction, not the functional presence of someone who marks the spaces between the male story. The center. The actual center, the weight the rest of the picture balances against. He calls Maureen O'Hara. The call is brief. Ford is not a man who uses many words to say things that don't require many words. He says, I have a picture. He says, I need you. He says, can you come to the meeting? She goes to the meeting. The film is The Long Gray Line, 1955. Not the most celebrated of Ford's pictures, not The Quiet Man, or The Searchers, or the films that appear first in the retrospectives. but a picture made with complete seriousness and complete craft, in which Maureen O'Hara plays a woman of specific and complex interior life, and the camera finds every layer of it, because she is bringing every layer of it, and Ford is building the shot around her the way he always builds the shot around her. The reviews notice, the audience notices, the particular quality that she refused to compromise, that she walked off a production rather than replace with something functional and empty. It is there on screen, unmistakable, doing exactly what it always does when the material is worth it, and the director sees it clearly and the camera is allowed to find what is actually there. The industry recalibrates. This is what industries do. When someone they have written off produces undeniable evidence that they were wrong, they don't apologize, they don't acknowledge the error, they simply begin to offer different roles. Better roles. Roles that someone somewhere has decided might actually benefit from the things she has that cannot be manufactured or replaced or directed into someone who doesn't already have it. She takes the roles that deserve what she brings. She passes on the ones that don't. The industry continues to find this difficult. She continues not to care about the industry finding it difficult. By 1957, 4 years after the walkout that was supposed to end her career, Maureen O'Hara is making films with Ford again. Working with directors who understand what they are working with, producing work that the camera captures with the same absolute fidelity it has always brought to whatever she gives it. Because the camera was never confused about what she was worth, the camera knew from the first frame on the first production. The camera has always known. There is one more thing worth saying about 1953 and what it cost and what it proved. The studio head who told her she was finished made his phone calls and waited for the outcome that always followed those phone calls. He waited for her to return, diminished, asking for terms. He waited for what the system produces when it applies sufficient pressure to someone who has stepped outside it. He waited for 4 years. What arrived at the end of 4 years was not a diminished Maureen O'Hara asking for terms. What arrived was a John Ford film and a performance that critics reached for new vocabulary to describe, and an audience that felt, without being able to name precisely what they were feeling, that something on the screen was completely and irreducibly true. He retired in 1961. Her career continued for another 4 decades. This is not a story about victory in the dramatic sense. There is no moment where the studio head acknowledges his error or extends his hand or says with the gravity of a man corrected by events that he was wrong. That is not how industries work, and it is not how this story ends. It ends with a woman who knew what she was worth and refused to accept less, who paid the cost of that refusal with complete clarity about what she was paying and why, and who was standing at the end of it with the evidence of every choice visible in everything she ever made. Years later, asked about the walkout, about the phone calls, about the studio head who told her she was finished, she thought for a moment before answering. She said, "He was right that it would cost me something. It did cost me something." She paused. But the alternative was cheaper in the short term, and much more expensive in the long term. The alternative was agreeing that the work didn't matter as long as the career continued. And I was never willing to agree to that. She paused again. She said, "The camera knows. Whatever else is happening, the camera knows. And everything I ever did, I did for the camera. Not for the industry, not for the studio heads. For the camera and for the truth it finds when you give it something real." She looked at the interviewer. She said, "I gave it something real my entire career. That's the only thing that was never negotiable. About what it costs to refuse to become what a system needs you to be when what it needs you to be is smaller than what you actually are. About the difference between a career that continues and a career that means something. About what happens when you walk out of a room that is asking you to be less than yourself and keep walking until you find the room that is asking for all of you." The studio head's office, 1953, Los Angeles. The door closes behind her and the room is very quiet for a long time. Then someone says, "You're finished in this town." Maureen O'Hara doesn't answer. She picks up her bag. She walks to the door. She opens it. She leaves. Here is the story.